Hi, and welcome to another edition of Studio 411. I'm your host, Larry Dasilva. Well, I'll tell you, I always love to travel back in time to talk to folks who perhaps, experienced different things or different events that we weren't around maybe to witness. I always say one of my favorite places to wish I could have gone was the Las Vegas scene of the 1950s, the whole Rat Pack era, as well as probably Brooklyn when the Dodgers were there. Well, we're not going to go to Brooklyn today, but we're going to visit with someone who certainly knows about Vegas and knows about the early days of television. We have singer Roberta Linn joining us today. And Roberta, of course, a singer, entertainer for, my goodness, many, many years. She is also an Emmy-winning performer, and we will talk to her about that and some of the many, many well-known people that she has been involved with over the years. So joining us from California via satellite, Roberta Linn, thank you for coming to Studio 411. How are you?
I'm wonderful, and thank you for inviting me, Larry. I'm happy to be with you.
Very good, very good. Now tell me, I was surprised to hear now you came from the middle America. How did you gravitate to Hollywood? Because as a young person, you were a child actress in movies. So how did you get from where you were born to out to the coast?
Well, the whole family from Iowa decided to move to California. So everybody packed up, and there we ended up in Hollywood. Actually, we ended up in a little town right outside of LA called Huntington Park. And that's why all my family was there. My dad was a professional baseball player. My mother was a farmer's daughter. And in those days, money was short and tight. So the way we made our money was my dad was working in the market. My mother was a secretary. And I was working with Central Casting doing movies. So I started at 4 years old doing movies at Warner Brothers, where my uncle was head of music, Al Dubin, that worked with Harold Arlen, that they did all the Busby Berkeley movies. And he got me my first part in a movie I didn't realize was Al Jolson until later in my life, but I played the part of an angel. And my mother said I was terribly miscast.
Now, what film, do you remember the title of that Jolson film?
Yes, it was Wunderbar, not Wunderbar, but he owned a bar called Wunderbar. And the only thing that I remember as a baby was that I remember this man walking up, it was like going into the sky with clouds, and he was going up this trail, and he had a mule, and he was singing a song, Going to Heaven on a Mule. And I found out later in my life that was Al Jolson. Can you imagine? I think I was about 4 years old.
Now, did you ever meet Mr. Jolson later once you were an adult? Did you ever run into him and say, "Hey, do you remember me? I was the little girl in Wunderbar"?
No, I didn't, but I did meet Ruby Keeler. Ruby Keeler lived here in Palm Springs, until she passed away. And so I did know Ruby Keeler, a beautiful lady, a wonderful actress, and a great tap dancer.
And Ruby Keeler, for those who don't remember, again, a very fine entertainer, actress, dancer, was in those Busby Berkeley musicals of the 30s and perhaps early 40s. Was it 42nd Street and, oh my God, so many others. But yeah.
The lyrics to 42nd Street. Al was head of music at Warner Brothers, and that's how I got into movies. And in those days, I worked under the name of Alberta Dugan, D-U-G-A-N. That was something my father dug up. And so all the movies that you are maybe going to talk about today, I was working under the name of Alberta Dugan.
And now you worked, I saw, with, we actually have a few photos, too, of Roberta as a young child actress. You worked with the great Boris Karloff. What can you remember any memories of him? And also, did you maybe meet him later on in life or no?
Did. Actually, Hollywood was like a big family community at that time. So it was tighter than it is today and not as broad. But I worked with Olivia de Havilland and Frank Chantone in a movie. In fact, it was Mervyn LeRoy produced it. And my name was Maria Giuseppe. And Mervyn LeRoy called me the Irish Wop in the movie because I had Alberta Dugan that was Irish. And Maria Giuseppe in the movie, and he loved that. That was a lot of fun, and I worked with a marvelous Olivia de Havilland in that. I'm trying to think of the movie right now. I'm having a senior moment. I'll think of it probably
That's
in
fine.
2 o'clock.
Well, I had one a few moments before we started taping, so that's understandable. Now, what about Olivia? Did you ever run into her later on in life, or no?
Yes, I did. When they used to have all the big events for movies and the Academy Awards at the Carthay Circle Theater. In fact, I sang and danced with Bojangles there on the stairs, and Dick Powell, who was a wonderful singer in those days at Warner Brothers. He introduced me, and I couldn't find him. I crawled out from under him, up between his legs on the stage.
There you go.
And he said, "What are you doing down there?" I said, "I couldn't find the wings, mister."
The great Dick Powell, I'll tell you. Oh, my goodness. So now, how did you gravitate then? Did you continue working in child parts until a certain age and then kind of gradually move into singing, or was there a little bit of a gap there?
I was always a singer-dancer. In fact, if I'm bragging myself a little bit, I was a really good tap dancer. And just a natural singer. My mom and dad both sang, and my mom played piano. And so I just sang all my life. I don't remember anything else. I did about 22 movies. One I starred in called Senior Jim with Barbara Bedford, and I can't think of the man's name right now. But I worked under the name of Alberta Dugan. And since I had a starring role, I worked at the $1 Million Theater in downtown Los Angeles, 5 shows a day with Cab Calloway. Hi, do you remember him?
Yeah, oh yeah, no, it's amazing. You've known them all, my goodness. By the way, I wanted to tell the viewers too, Roberta several years ago wrote a book that is still available called Champagne Lady. Again, obviously, some of these stories and people that she's talking to us about today, as well as, of course, the fact that she was the Champagne Lady on the Lawrence Welk Show during a time for about 5 or 6 years in the late 40s and early to mid 50s before she struck out on her own. So we'll be talking a little bit about that with Roberta about Lawrence Welk and so many others that she's crossed path with over the years. Well, we'll go back to Lawrence Welk there. When did you meet him, and how did you come about to become a member of his orchestra as a singer?
Larry, I've got a great story about that. I had auditioned for his manager, Sam Lutz, and I hadn't quite gotten out of high school yet. And so they had Liberace, they had Lawrence Welk, they had K-Star. And he said, "Honey, I love the way you sing, but you're just a little too young for our stable." So a few years later, I ran into him on Sunset and Vine, where their office was right there. And Hollywood Palladium was kind of cattywampus from their office on Sunset Boulevard. And so he said, "Hi, kid, how you doing?" He said, "Have you got a job yet?" I said, "Well, I'm just plugging songs for Chappelle Music right now on different radio shows." And he said, "Lawrence Welk is looking for a new singer. And I want you, if you'd like to, be at the Hollywood Palladium at 7:30 tonight to audition." And so I called my mom right away, and she got me all fixed up. He said, "Tell him you're a little bit older. Tell him you're 20 at least." And so we got there at 7:30 in the evening, and at 12:30 at night, I think he had 100 girl singers there. They auditioned, they sang every song that I had planned. And the manager of the ballroom came up, and my mom and I were sitting right close to the entrance to the stage at the ballroom. And the manager said, "Larry, if you audition one more girl singer, you can take your accordion and go back to Yankton." And my mom said, "Did you hear what he just said?" She said, "We've been here since 7:30. And if you don't go up there and ask him to sing one song, I'm going to kill you." So I walked up and I tapped him on the shoulder. And I said, "Mr. Welk, my mom and I have been here since 7:30. Your manager told us to get here at that time. And I know you've heard some wonderful girls, and you're probably never going to hire me. But my mom said, if you don't let me sing at least one song before we go home, she's going to kill me." And he said, "What did you say your name was?" And that's the way he talked. And I said, "My name is Roberta Linn." Well, with Lawrence Welk, every B was a P. So he said, Roberta Linn. That's a nice name, kid. I hope you can sing. So with that, he let me sing. And I sang, Embrace Me, my sweet embrace of you. Every girl had already sung that. And then, as luck would have it, he said, you know, I'm as corny as Kansas in August. He sang it to me. And I said, oh, Mr. Welk, I just learned that song. And he said, well, the band's going to play an 8-bar intro. You're going to sing a chorus. And then the band's going to play a half a chorus. Then you're going to come in and I'll get you out. So you know what, Larry? I got in okay. I got out okay. The key was perfect. And now it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was ready to say goodbye and thank you for letting me sing when he walked over to me and he looked at me and he said, what did you say your name was again? I said, Roberta Linn. He said, you know, Roberta, you're the new Champagne lady.
Wow, very nice.
And I got the job.
Very nice. You know, it's funny, growing up, of course, you know, I got to see the Welk show later on when it was on ABC. And, of course, you know, as a young adult, then it was in syndication. But, you know, so many of those names you mentioned, like his manager, Lutz. Then I saw a couple of video clips of a couple of guys that really transcended almost the whole history of that show. A guy named Dick Dale, who that when you started there was young himself. And another guy that I remember very good, not just because he had the same first name as I did, but Larry Hooper was another guy that was already a middle-aged guy when you started with him. And I know he had some heart issues later on in life, but he was a trooper. And I'll tell you, I think right up until his last breath, he was on that Welk show.
He never wanted to sing. And Lawrence Welk heard him sing. I sang lead with all the girls. I was the only girl in the band.
Yeah.
And sang lead with all the duets and the trios and the quartet and so on. And Larry had a big record. On the backside of one of my records was Oh, What a Time I Had With Me, the Mermaid. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
And on the other side, I had Say It Isn't So. And I love Larry. Larry was one of my dear friends. Dick Dale, I was on the band after I joined Lawrence on that Thursday night. Sunday, we did our first record section with Mitch Miller. And I sang Stalagadoo, Chicaboo, Bibbidi Bobbidi. Monday, we left on the road, and Larry, we did 42 weeks of one-nighters without a day off, averaged 300 miles a day, because we had to be in a different city to do the ABC television show. We were under contract to Miller High Life Beer, and Larry Hooper and I were Miller High Life. Larry sang Miller High Life, Miller. I was High Life, and he was Miller. And Larry and I are very close. And I love the band. I love that. That was one of the best orchestras in the industry at the time. And we were the last of the big bands that played the ballrooms across the country. And a lot of them closed after that. We were lucky we got on television at that point.
I mean,
I'll tell you how.
That's a good point you bring up. Why is it that after World War II, during that ensuing 5 or 10 year period, yeah, a lot of those ballrooms that were really active during the 20s, 30s, 40s, same thing here in Connecticut. We had a few of them that just kind of ceased to exist. Was it the change in the musical styles, or why did those go the way of the drive-in theater?
You know, I really don't know. In fact, I worked the ones up in Connecticut and in New York. When we did that tour around with the 300 miles a day, and the Aragon and Trianon in Chicago were beautiful. The women dressed so gorgeous, and they had organ players that played in between, and the ball that turned at the top of the room with the light shining. It was really a treat. People don't know what they missed. The Aragon was, they had the Aragon and Trianon ballrooms down in Santa Monica at that time. And when we opened at Aragon, I think we were kind of the last of the Mohegans. How we got on the television, if you'd like me to fill that in, they were doing Harry Owens and the Royal Hawaiians with Hilo Hattie. And they had all the equipment there. And the fellow that was head of KTLA, which was Paramount Studios Television, they owned that station, was Klaus Landsberg, who is a young man that came from Germany that invented the RCA color tube. And he was a great musician. He understood all the music, and he loved our band. He loved the polkas and the waltzes and everything we did. And he came up, I remember, and he said, he called him Larry too. He said, Larry, he said, I really would like to see you and the band stay out here in California at the Aragon. He said, I'm going to put you on Wednesday night at 11 o'clock, right after the Royal Hawaiians, and let's see what we get. Well, I've got to tell you something. From driving around 300 miles and doing all this one-nighters, staying home was so exciting. And our show took off like Buster's Gang. Our first commercial was for Laura Scudder potato chips. And then we got chicken of the sea tuna. And then we had a Chevrolet company downtown, and I introduced, buy your Chevrolet at Central Chevrolet. Central Chevrolet is waiting for your call. You know who took that song?
Dinah Shore, yeah.
I introduced that song. I'm going to take credit. And that's how we got onto TV. Then we were so popular that they moved us into prime time. And the Welk Show, of course, KTLA had all the great musical shows, Leighton Noble. They had a kind of a Dixieland show that they had Spade Cooley. Spade Cooley was a huge, huge producer of shows for the stars in Hollywood. In fact, Bob Hope did his first show on KTLA. Time for Beanie, Space Patrol, all the musical shows. KTLA won more Emmy Awards, I think, than any local station. And Klaus was responsible for that. And I must tell you that I love this man. He was like a father to me. He's when he was so sick, dying of cancer, he got out of the hospital, went with the Marines and set up the relay stations to do the atom bomb out of Nevada. What a man he was. What a genius. And he died, I think, Klaus had to be maybe in his early 40s. His son now is producing movies, Clevie Landsberg. We're very close.
Singer and nightclub performer, Emmy Award winner Roberta Linn joining us for the hour via satellite from California here on Studio 411. We have a couple of photos from back in the day of you along with Lawrence Welk. We also have one with Mr. Welk and a future president of the United States. I think he was still wandering around in Death Valley days in those days. I'm not sure. That's Ronald Reagan on the right, along with a chipper Roberta and Lawrence Welk. You know, it's funny hearing you do Lawrence Welk. I can see why guys like Robin Williams and so many others used to imitate him because, yeah, he had a classic, kind of like Ed Sullivan. They all had these distinctive vocal patterns that, you know, were easy to kind of do and, you know, make a little light of, you know, nothing malicious. But, yeah, you do a good job. I saw a clip of you where you were doing a long banter as Lawrence, and I must say you were very, very good. You should work that into your nightclub act.
I did. In fact, I have a wonderful story you're going to love. On our first television show, Lawrence got so nervous that he made one of the great bloopers of all time. He came on the air and he said, "Good evening, my friends, and welcome to our very first TV show here from the Aragon Ballroom." Santa Monica, California. He said, "Tonight we got the wonderful champagne lady, Roberta Linn, and all these wonderful boys in the pen." And he looked at me and he looked at the boys and he says, "Okay, Roberta, okay, boys, you know, it's our first TV show, and I want you all to pee on your toes."
Oh,
It's a true story.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Well, no wonder that show stayed on for 30-some years. There you go. You were with him for 5 or 6 years. What before you left the show? Do I have that correct? You started doing the show. I believe it was on KTLA. Correct me if I'm wrong. The one that won you that Emmy that we're looking at. How did that come about? Were you like doing double duty, doing that while you were still on the Welk Show, or no?
Oh, wait a minute. I was doing triple duty.
Oh, okay.
I did the Welk Show, sang at the ballroom every night, did the ABC radio show. I did all the voices on a national show that Klaus had for ice skaters called Frosty Bollocks. And I did all the voices on those shows. I did a mouse, a dog, a Cinderella, the stepsisters, and the old stepmother on that show. So I was doing 3 television shows a week. When Dodge bought the show, they bought me on the show with that. At that point, Klaus had offered me my own television show for the Gas Appliance Dealers of America, syndicated, and it was called Gypsy at first, and then they changed it to Cafe Continental. And I had Josephine Premise on the show, Jean Seglon, the wonderful Alfred Apaka from Hawaii. It was a wonderful little show. And that's how I won my Emmy Award. I was nominated 4 years in a row, and I won this Emmy for the most outstanding female performer on television that year. And because it was a national show, I have the full-size Emmy. The local Emmys are about 3/4 this size, but this is the big one, and I'm so proud of it.
And we have a shot just to show you how Roberta has not aged a bit. We have a shot of her. So if we can go to that shot of her back in 1950 something with her Emmy, and then quick go back to her. See, she hasn't changed a bit.
Gosh.
There you go. That's her now, and now we go to Roberta. Look at that. Huh? It's like we're seeing twins. There we go. Look at that. So yeah, that's a nice piece of armament you have there, and I am talking about the Emmy. So.
The big girl. She's part of my life. I'm very proud of it. I'm not bragging. I'm lucky. I must tell you, I've had a wonderful career, and as I reflect back and all the wonderful people that I've worked with, the things that I've done, I've been very fortunate. I've been in God's hands. God's been in my career.
Now, where does that go at night? You don't take that to sleep with you, do you?
You know what? Somebody said to me after I did my first show down here in Palm Springs, they said, nobody's ever seen an Emmy Award in person. They've seen them on TV and so on, like the Oscars and so on. Why don't you bring it to the show and put it on the table? And then maybe later people would like to take a picture with you and the Emmy. And so it's been a part of my show. I do a show where I do some popular, I do a little something new, something old, and a little bit rock and roll. And I have my girl with me, and then we take pictures with the people. They love it, and I'm very proud of it.
Now, we touched, I believe, on this gentleman a few minutes back. We have a shot of you with Bob Hope. Am I correct? It wasn't this shot that we're going to show. It was another one that talked about, I guess, did you do like an Australian tour with Bob at one point in time?
Yes, Paramount Studios sent me ahead of Bob. He was filming a film at the time, and I went ahead with his head of public relations from Paramount. And we did the world premiere of The Seven Little Boys. We did Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. And let me tell you, it was probably one of the thrills of my life. I love this man. He was so generous to me and so kind. And one of the great teachers of timing for comedy. I did all the Jane Russell bits with him, buttons and bows, and I did my own spot. But he was so generous to show me, like he'd say, Roberta, the next show, pause a little bit here so that I can do a take and then come back in with my line, and you'll see we'll get a bigger laugh every time. He was just perfect at what he did. And I also did some USO things here in the United States with him, with Jane Russell, Jerry Colonna, Dennis Day, and so on. And but I love this man. The last time I saw him was at Canyon Country Club here. He was still playing golf and almost blind. And somebody said that I was in the room, and he said, "Where is she?" And I went over, and he gave me a big hug and kiss. I love this man. Bob Hope was one of my favorite people to work with.
Now, when you worked with him, was Les Brown already working with him?
Yes.
It was Les Brown's orchestra. Yeah, he was with him forever. My goodness.
Yes. Well, Les Brown had one of the great bands. That's where Doris Day came out of the Les Brown band.
Yeah, I think I hear someone tuning up an instrument. Is that?
I don't know what that is. I have a musical clock, and I don't think there's any way of stopping it. It'll just Two more bars.
No, that's okay. Very nice. It came in at the right time. We were talking about Les Brown. I like that. Very good. Anytime we mention a musical person, we'll have to have that clock start playing. That works for me. Roberta Linn joining us for the hour here on Studio 411. Her book that came out a while back, but still worth mentioning. We have a still of it, Champagne Lady, of course, from her long-running career, starting in movies as a young child actress, and of course through her days working as the Champagne Lady on the Lawrence Welk Show, pre-Norma Zimmer. I say that if my mom was alive, God bless her, it was like Norma Zimmer was like the singer when my mom and I used to watch that show. Myron Floren, and then, of course, the young'uns that came along, Arthur Duncan, Bobby Burgess, many that came on after your time there, but just a real wealth of talent throughout the history of that show.
Well, the first band, we're the ones, I want to straighten this out. All of the films of the first show were burned up when Gene Autry bought. They were on Kinescope, and unfortunately they were in a garage or something at KTLA or some big building, and somebody came in and threw all those Kinescopes out. The only ones that are left, UCLA has them right now. But I've got to tell you, there's not a band that I've ever known or worked with or been around that ever worked any harder than that first band. And we were the pioneers of that show. Dodge was very, very upset that I didn't stay with the show because I had become very popular with them. And I loved every minute I was with them. I loved Dancing with Lawrence. I was there when we found Dick Dale. I was there when we found Myron Floren. I was the very first television Champagne Lady. Alice Vaughn took my place. She passed away at a very early age in the 80s, had a terrible disease, and she passed away. And then Norma came on. And the reason they had Norma, too, was because she had more of an ingenue, a kind of operatic, which was really not a band singer voice, but she was one of my best friends in the whole world. I loved her. We did a 4-hour TV special from Brinson, Missouri in the early 2000s, and Norma and I were very, very dear friends. Everybody that was on that show, Larry, is gone. I'm the last one alive of the original band.
Wow, amazing.
And I'm happy to say that.
And she has no plans on leaving anytime soon, I can tell you that. So good for you. Now, someone speaking that about people that have left us, about three and a half years ago, we had this lady on via telephone on this program. We have a shot of you and her, the fabulous comedian, Broadway star, television star, Kay Ballard, who I was very pleased to see was an old friend of yours. Share a little bit about, someone I got to talk to on a half a dozen occasions setting up the interview, and she was kind enough to do the show. Tell us about your friendship with Kay Ballard.
Well, our friendship was kind of on again, off again, because I was traveling and she was traveling. But I've got to tell you, I went to her documentary that they did just before she passed away.
Yes, indeed, yep.
I did go to her funeral, unfortunately. But I've got to tell you, I had no idea, as well as I knew her and as fascinated as I was about Kay Ballard with her comedy and so on, I did not realize what a wonderful singer she was. And that documentary really showed her off. And I loved her dearly. You couldn't have met a nicer person than Kay Ballard. Unspoiled, kind to everybody. When she was out, people would come up and say hello, and she was never too busy to say hello and be kind to people. Kay Ballard, one of the greats, I think, in show business.
Oh, yeah, very underrated, I thought, as far as her time on Broadway. I think she made a comment that, understandably, that, she thought she should have been nominated for a Tony Award. If you go back, she was in Carnival, and she was on the cover of Life magazine back around 1954, I believe. I mean, she was a big deal. I mean, people remember from the Doris Day show, of course, my favorite, The Mothers-in-Law. But, she was a big deal. And when we had her on the show, what was remarkable to me was that, yeah, you could see that she was slowing down a little bit, but she was just always in motion, always a new project or a new compilation. The documentary she spoke with at length about. So, I was very saddened when she passed away.
Yeah, everybody was here. She had a great turnout for her final resting.
Yeah. Now, we have a photo of some of your nightclub performing. We have a photo, I believe it's of the Riviera Club in Vegas. You were opening for one young, hot and coming, up and coming Debbie Reynolds. But in the mid-'50s, then, when you left, not only had left the Welk show, but then left your own Emmy Award-winning show, you went to Vegas, and you were working with some pretty big stars in those mid-'50s.
Yes. The first time I went to Vegas was 1955. Charlie O'Kern staged my act. Nelson Riddle did my music, and Edith Head did my gowns. And I opened at the New Frontier, which was the hotel to work in those days in Vegas. And I opened with Marge and Gower Champion. And again, may I tell you, what wonderful people, so very, very talented. And I was very young, and I ended up then going from there to, with Danny Thomas, to the Sands. In fact, I was supposed to open with Martin and Lewis. I was going to do a movie with them, and I unfortunately got very sick. I was working the Chi-Chi here in Palm Springs. I didn't realize how important these guys were going to be. Rowan and Martin was my opening act at the Chi-Chi in Palm Springs. And I got pneumonia in Palm Springs in both lungs. I got through that, and I had to cancel with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis because I wasn't well. So I came back with Danny Thomas and opened with Danny. I did a lot of shows with Danny Thomas. Then I went to the Desert Inn with Schnozzle Durante, wonderful guy to work with. Then I did my own headlining show at the Riviera. And then later on, after I got well from being sick, I opened for the Ames brothers, who had a fight and was supposed to open at the Moulin Rouge in Hollywood. And I was lucky enough they called me to come down and do that spot. So I opened for the Ames brothers. And Frank Senes and Rocky Senes took me over for management, and they brought me back in. And I was working back-to-back with Billy Daniels at the Stardust Hotel. And then I worked the Calneva Lodge for Frank Sinatra and the Riverside Hotel in Reno and the Mapes. I headlined the Harrah's Hotel, Harrah's Club in Tahoe. And then I fell in love with my husband, who was a rock and roller, Freddie Bell.
Freddie Bell, indeed. Before we get to Freddie, we have a photo of a note. In those days, there weren't text, folks, or Instagrams or whatever. A note from Dean Martin. Let's see if I can read this. Loads of good luck tonight. Know you will be sensational. Dean Martin. That was a, what did they call those? Like a Western Union telegram with the words congratulations. So that was good. How well did you get to know? How well did you get to know Mr. Dean Martin? Tell me a little story about him.
Well, I worked Vegas when the Rat Pack was there. And I had a very nice home, and so when all the guys were working at the Sands, Frank and Dean and
Sammy,
Joey Bishop, Sammy.
Yeah.
Sammy is, in my estimation, if I put in a vote, he was the best entertainer, all-around entertainer ever. A singer, dancer, musician, actor. And a cute little guy, a little tiny Dean.
He was.
Dean Martin with Freddie every day. He was when we were in Tahoe or in Vegas, and Frank Sinatra, one of my very, very special friends. When Fred and I divorced, he was very upset because they loved my children. He didn't think Freddie and I should have divorced. So he had Harry Guardino pick me up and take me to his beautiful home here in Palm Springs. And I was pretty shy at the time, even though I'd been in show business a long time. And in the kitchen is Frank Sinatra and his mother making linguine and clams and a salad. And at the table that I'm sitting right next to Kirk Douglas and his wife, Burt Lancaster, Milton Berle and his wife, and they showed a brand new. There were several houses in that complex that he had here on Frank Sinatra Drive, and we went over and watched a brand new Burt Lancaster film that night. And I think that was just before his mother flew into the mountain.
Quite a cast there. Just a little tea party there with the All-Stars, huh?
Well, you can't imagine. I had worked with big stars all my life, so I wasn't one of these that was totally gaga over it. But I was just so thinking, how lucky am I to be here tonight with all these fantastic people, you know, and Frank Sinatra cooking for me and his cooking for me. As I reflect back on my life, and I don't say this in any way to be bragging, I'm grateful for the people that I've been connected with and actually been personal friends with and broken bread with over the table at home. And I'm a lucky girl. I'm a lucky lady. I still say a girl. I think I'm 39, yet I'm trying. Anyway, I'm holding on.
There you go. You're doing very well, I'll tell you. Singer, nightclub performer, Emmy winner Roberta Linn joining us from California for this hour on Studio 411. We have a shot here. I think it was part of a telethon you hosted in the 50s, and I was telling the crew, because they didn't know who it was, I said, no, it's not Michael J. Fox, it's Mickey Rooney. It looked like you and Mickey. Mickey was either having like he was having a seizure or he was dancing. I'm not sure what he was doing, but Mickey was quite a character, huh? Did he ever ask you out by any chance?
Yes, years before that telethon. But that was the very first multiple sclerosis telethon at the Ambassador Hotel, and I auctioned off a dress every hour. And in that last scene where you see us dancing and we're like 2 feet off the air.
Yes, he certainly is. That's why I figured I better ask, because I think Mickey was very, very excited.
Well, let me tell you what happened. The dress that I had on that we were auctioning at that time is the dress that Jack Lemmon wore in Some Like It Hot.
Wow.
The dress, and we auctioned that off, and then I went into In the Land of Obajingo, lived a gal called Obajingo, and that's what Mickey and I were dancing to. We were dancing to Obajingo. And that was the closing of the show, and I have a big poster. In fact, I just did a show on the 3rd for a lady here that was very famous in Palm Springs. Her name was Gloria Greer. She passed away of MS, and her daughter has MS. And I did another telethon, and I brought this big poster with Mickey and I with all those pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the first multiple sclerosis telethon at the Ambassador with Mickey Rooney and I.
There you go. Now, getting back to a gentleman, as she said, musician and early rock and roller, Freddie Bell, that you ultimately married. We have a photo of you and Freddie back when I think you were doing your nightclub act. There you go. There you go. So you guys were together a long time. I know you have you have at least one a son by him, correct?
I have a son and a daughter.
A son and daughter. Okay.
Son Freddie Bell Jr. runs the Air Museum here in Palm Springs. And my daughter is living up near Reno and has a very good job. And she just made me a great grandma. And her boy did. And I wanted to tell you something about Fred. Freddie and I were married for 13 years. And when I was doing my shows in the main room, he was in the lounge at the Sahara. And I used to run over and get on stage with him. And we'd mess around, because he was doing the late shows and so on. So we just had a lot of fun together. I'd get up with the bellboys and Fred, and we did a lot of things. And finally, Louis Prima and Katie Smith, who to me were one of the best acts ever, and Sam Butera and the Witnesses, they left the Sahara to go to the Desert Inn. And Stan Irwin, who was head of the hiring all the acts and so on, entertainment director for Sahara, he came to Fred and I and he said, I had already had my baby. Okay, at that point, Fred and I were married and had the baby, but we were working separately. So he said, you know what? You've got a brand new baby. You've got a lovely home here. I'll give you 5 years at the Sahara to take the Louis Prima and Keely Smith spot. And he said, I'll give you great money and more money each year as it goes on, 42 weeks a year.
Wow.
I said, are you putting me on 42 weeks a year? We're going to work here at the Sahara headlining and so on. So we took the Louis Prima Keely Smith spot.
We have a photo of you guys outside the Sahara billboard, and it was funny. You started to tell me about Louis Prima and Keely Smith, and I was going to say, seeing the photo of you guys and performing a little bit that I saw, you guys reminded me of them, and sure enough, there you go, right into knowing them. How Louis Prima, quite a character, wasn't he?
Right. Oh, they were. I'll never forget the first time I ever saw them. They never charged a cover charge. You could go in and watch this great talent with no charge and a free breakfast and watch Louis Prima and Keely Smith and Sam Butera. Great act. I can't say more than that. You've never seen better entertainers. Louis was great. Keely was a great singer. Sam Butera, a great talent. And it was quite a privilege to take their spot. But it also gave me a chance to enjoy my baby. And my mom moved back to Vegas, and I got her a house. I bought her own house. And she took care of my babies. I had another baby after that. My husband, Freddie, wrote the clean lyrics to A Hound Dog. A Hound Dog was originally done by a lady that had an act, a lady of color, and it was kind of naughty. And they couldn't play it on their disc jockey shows because it wasn't acceptable for the teenagers. So they asked Freddie if he would rewrite the lyrics. The lyrics that Fred Bell wrote, and this is documented, are the ones that Elvis Presley recorded.
Gotcha.
And what happened, Freddie was working the lounge of the Sands. Colonel Parker heard the song, got the record, took it back to Elvis. Elvis recorded it. And of course, he knocked Freddie's record right out of the water. But we became very good friends. So he used to stay at our house. And when we were in Puerto Rico working after we broke away, the only time we left the Sahara was to go to Puerto Rico to the Americana. And he would stay at home and he slept in my bed. And I used to tell everybody, Elvis slept in my bed and I never washed the sheets.
Oh, my goodness. And I thought Diana Goodman was the only one that I've had on this show that was an Elvis gal. Okay, the truth comes out. There we go. We've got a shot of you and Bing Crosby. I'm telling you, this lady really got around with these performers, and I say that in a nice way, singing. We've got a shot of her and Bing. Look at that. I'm telling you. It's, when I saw the shot, I thought you were someone else because you've got a hat on and this fancy. I thought it was Dorothy Lamour, but it's you with Der Bingle there, huh?
Well, they had a Hawaiian party. And that's why I think he has a lei around his neck or something and his little hat on. And we sang, what a thrill that was. Of course, he and Bob were all together, and I was always along with them and so on. And it was, Palm Springs is like this very small community in those days. And so the entertainers, we were always getting together and doing benefits for the police department here with Frank Sinatra and Eddie Cantor and Bob Hope and Jerry Colonna. And I mean, it was just a big family. And I love Bing Crosby. In fact, that night, Angie Dickinson was there just before she was a starlet at that time. And that was done, I think, up at the Bing Crosby estate up here in Indian Wells. Was that? Yeah, Indian Wells area.
What year was that? Do you remember what year that was? Was that in
yes, I do.
In the 60s or late 50s?
Late 50s.
Late 50s. I was going to say, because I remember seeing an old show of her. Jimmy Durante had a show that he had a couple of different shows, I think, but he had one where Angie was actually one of the chorus girls in the show, and all of a sudden I saw that's Angie Dickinson, but she hadn't hit it big yet. and then she kind of became kind of an unofficial member of the Rat Pack, you know, before she moved on to bigger and better things, including perhaps John F. Kennedy. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think she did, but I won't think about any secrets here. In the picture that I have of that night, she's down in front. She's with a very famous guy that was one of the heads of Paramount Studios. She had dark hair. She was very pretty. Yeah. And this was before she became a big star. But he was, whoever this was, I can't think of the name right now. He really promoted her. She was a great gal, by the way. I liked Angie. Was one of the crowd.
Oh,
you know, she was
still with us as we tape. She's still with us, and I just saw her on a television thing, reminiscing about. I think it was reminiscing about the Rat Pack days, and yeah, she's still very much policewoman. Angie Dickinson, still you know, at it. Tell me about. We got a shot of you and a well-known singer, a guy that just had a beautiful voice, Lou Rawls. What do you remember about Mr. Rawls?
Oh, I loved him. He was a dear friend. He and his wife and Fred and I had a lot of nights together out for dinner and so on. And you know, Lou Rawls was such a humble guy. And he always, if there was an entertainer, didn't matter whether you were a main headliner or working a lounge or whatever, he always took the time to introduce everybody. I really respected that of him. And I think the last time I saw him before he passed away, he worked in the McCollum Theater here in Palm Desert and Palm Springs. And he made such a big deal out of me. He was just a wonderful person, and I loved his singing. He just had a great style, and he was a wonderful gentleman, just a great guy.
I'm going to give you 4 names, 4 talk shows that primarily in the 60s you did as we wind down our time with Roberta Linn. Just give me like a short sentence on each one, not so much about your time on their show, but them as a person or maybe a quick anecdote. Mike Douglas.
Wonderful guy to work with, and I enjoyed doing the show. I did it several times.
Joey Bishop show, not the sitcom, the talk show.
Well, you know, I knew Joey from the Rat Pack.
Yes, so yeah.
So it was just a natural to do his show, and he was wonderful for me.
How about a young Regis Philbin back in the mid-'60s? You did his talk show.
Regis Philbin, I knew when he was a disc jockey in San Diego. Before anybody even knew who Regis Philbin was. And I've watched him grow. We've remained very good friends.
And, of course, I would be remiss to leave out the great Johnny Carson. You did his show a couple of times, I assume from New York City.
Johnny Carson, his mother went to school with my mother in Missouri, Westminster College. And my mother brought her to see my show when I had Cafe Continental. And she said to my mother, true words, "Oh, if Johnny could only get a break like Roberta."
There you go.
And he was on the show several times. I did the show several times.
And you mentioned someone earlier that I wanted to go back to because again he did so much philanthropy work. Seemed like a guy that was very humble and very true to his roots. You worked with you said Danny Thomas. Of course, Danny started St. Jude's Hospital and did so much for so many people. Seemed like a real upstanding guy. What are your memories of working with Danny?
With a picture behind me on the wall, Danny and I did a big benefit for St. Jude, who's the saint of the impossible, for Monsignor Trevisano in San Diego. And Monsignor gave me this picture. He brought it back from Europe. And it's called Walking in the Bois, in the park. And it's a treasure of mine. One of my favorite charities still to this day is St. Jude. Danny devoted his whole life to it. He had I'm not too sure what happened. He had an incident in his career, might have been in Chicago, with maybe some of the fellows that ran the places. And I think that he prayed to St. Jude and said, if you will save me from any problems so I can be with my family and my children, St. Jude, I will dedicate my life to you. And Danny did, and now the children are following through. And what a charity. If you're going to put out money, folks, St. Jude is a wonderful charity to go to. No, they don't charge anyone, and all these little children I was privileged to help Danny raise money on a lot of charities. And all these little babies that are taken in there with cancer, oh my, it makes me, I get tears in my eyes thinking about it. What a great guy, what a great charity, and what a privilege to be part of it.
Absolutely. And on that note, so much more to cover, so many more. We'll have to have Roberta back. We are going to show a clip from a movie that you and Freddie and his band did called Get Yourself a College Girl. We have the trailer to that movie. So if you look real quick, because there's a lot of acts in this movie, musically, it's a great film. I don't know about the plot line, but I'll tell you, it was a good film, and I was glad to see you guys were in it. I can't thank you enough for making some time. We finally were able to get together to spend some time, and best wishes on any future projects, and we hope to have you back on the program to share some more stories with us.
I would be privileged to do that, Larry. Enjoyed it very, very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
You hang in there with us, and we are going to show you a trailer as we wrap up this episode of Studio 411. It's from the movie Get Yourself a College Girl, and a lot of bands you're going to recognize, some rock and roll Hall of Famers, as well as, of course, Freddie Bell and his then-wife Roberta Linn, along with Freddie's band. We thank you for joining us here on this episode of Studio 411. Larry Dasilva is my name. Enjoy the clip, and we will see you soon. Take care.
Get lovin'. Get laughin'. Get happy.
And get yourself a college girl, a well-read book of knowledge, girl. She's a woman of the world. She's fun and fancy-free.
It's a ball. It's a blast. With a cast that's the last. The Dave Clark Five. The Animals. Stan Getz and Astra Gilberto.
Lovely, the girl from Ipanema goes walking.
The Jimmy Smith Trio. Freddie Bell, Roberta Linn, and the Bell Boys.
Love, 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 love.
Marianne Mobley. Chad Everett.
Taylor, I have something to say to you and...
Oh.
Later.
Joan O'Brien. Nancy Sinatra.
Marge, you ought to get married. Whee!
Chris Snowell.
You, here, oh, this research is very exhausting. Harry! Look out! You hurt?
Get my hands out.
Can't you get him out?
Of course not. I'm stuffed.
That's all I wanted to know.
Get me out of here.
Get lovin'. Get laughin'.
Swimming in the West.
Get happy. Get yourself a college girl.